She says, can we recite only Ayatul Kursi after Fatiha in Salat? First of all, we have to know that Salat, the prayer we pray 5 times a day as pillars of Islam, and the other prayers that we pray throughout the day and night as voluntary or recommended or emphatic sunnah, these are composed of pillars, mandatory acts and words, and composed of voluntary acts. How did we reach this conclusion? The answer is by the scholars sitting down, looking at all the evidences about the description of the Salat of the Prophet ﷺ, identifying that this is a pillar because the Prophet told the man who came to the masjid 3 times giving salam, and the Prophet says, alayka salam, go back and pray because you did not pray. And the man repeated this 3 times, and then he said, O Prophet of Allah, this is all what I know, teach me. So the Prophet taught him. Whatever the Prophet taught him at that hadith, the scholars consider this to be a pillar. So there are pillars. If you forget them or deliberately ignore them, your prayer is invalid. You have to pray them in a salat. You cannot have fajr without 2 ruku' and 4 sujood. If you have fajr with 3 sujood and you leave, your prayer is invalid. Then we have the mandatory acts, which if you forgot them, then your prayer is valid. If you deliberately leave them, then your prayer is invalid, such as saying Allahu Akbar to do ruku' or to do sujood, or to sit between the 2 sujood saying Allahu Akbar in the movement. Saying Sami Allahu liman hamidah when you raise from ruku'. When you say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim in ruku' or Subhana Rabbi al-A'la in sujood. These are mandatory acts. Then we have voluntary acts, such as raising the hands when saying Allahu Akbar, putting the right over the left on the chest. This is voluntary. If I put them down, there's no problem. And such as reciting the surah after the Fatiha. What? Yes, and bear with me. Dhuhr prayer is composed of 4 rak'ah. We all know since childhood that we recite the Fatiha in the first rak'ah and a surah, the Fatiha and a surah in the second rak'ah, the Fatiha alone in the third and the fourth rak'ah. But what is a pillar, what is mandatory, and what is voluntary? Scholars say that the Fatiha is a pillar in Dhuhr, in each and every rak'ah, no doubt in that. But reciting the surah after the Fatiha in the first and second rak'ah is a highly recommended sunnah. Which means that if you deliberately do not recite it and go to ruku' immediately in the first and the second rak'ah, your prayer is valid. Not only that, in the third and fourth rak'ah, if I recite the Fatiha and then I decided to recite another surah afterwards, the salat is valid and there's no problem in that, because in the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, the Prophet ﷺ prolonged the third and fourth rak'ah to be half the time spent in the first and second rak'ah of Dhuhr prayer. So I hope this answers the question. Again, to recite only Ayatul Kursi after the Fatiha is totally legit and permissible. You recite less than that, no problem. You recite more than that, there's no problem.